Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. It's Sunday evening to you all. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there tonight and had yourselves a wonderful day. And I hope everyone's been having a great weekend out there as it's coming to an end, it's wrapping up, and we're about to head off into a pretty active work week in regards to the weather. So that's what we're here to discuss, obviously. We're going to break down Monday and Tuesday's severe weather event. I do think it could be active after that, too. Wednesday already has a 15% risk area for areas of the southern plains. And I think we'll wake up tomorrow morning with a 15% risk area for Thursday. And I have my eyes on Thursday, by the way, too, for a higher end severe weather day also. But in this video, we're just going to focus in on Monday and Tuesday. First thing we'll go over is the latest from the Storm Prediction Center for Monday. We'll zoom into individual states. We'll give you guys some really good graphics, especially for the highlighted states of this severe weather threat. And then we'll show you some short range model guidance. But I can tell you, short range cam model guidance does not support, it doesn't really back up the atmospheric play for tomorrow. And that's why it is just guidance. It's just model guidance. So I'm interested as we get into the overnight hours into tomorrow morning if things change, but I'm going to give you my thoughts on some things as we go along. Don't just want to jump on here, show you a bunch of fancy graphics and not give you my thoughts on the setup, my opinions. And so we'll do that. We'll talk about the ingredients that will be there that supports a higher end severe weather day and nerd out with you guys there. And then we'll do the same thing for Tuesday. We won't get quite as detailed, but we'll focus in a lot more on Tuesday after we get past tomorrow's severe weather threat. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. It goes a long way, especially when these videos really aren't getting as much views as maybe the videos doing like hurricane season and winter. It seems like these videos, when we talk about severe weather, just don't get as much. They just don't get out there as much. I don't know why, and I think it's because most of my audience is probably from the south, and this event is going to be primarily for areas to the north. But always want to be consistent. Keep the content rolling regardless of whatever the views do, because I pride myself in getting very detailed for you guys, because I do think it makes a difference. I don't know. I can't make a video in 5 to 8 minutes like some people do. Props to the people that can do it. And I think with people's attention span these days, I think a lot of people prefer that. And I think social media has done that to a lot of people, including me, guys. I'm guilty as charged for it too. I am, but I'm always going to get detailed. I'm always going to pump out the 30 to 40 minute videos, and here I am making an almost 3-minute intro for you guys. But I don't know if I've said this, but if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling. So this is the latest outlook per the Storm Prediction Center. It dropped a couple hours ago. We still have that moderate risk. There has been some kind of tweaks here and there, but in general, the idea is still about the same. Moderate risk, level 4 out of 5 across areas of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and northern Iowa. Enhanced risk surrounds this all the way up to Duluth, all the way back over, and basically slashing the UP and Michigan in half. Western areas of the UP will have a higher severe weather risk than the eastern areas. Enhanced risk does drop all the way down to northern areas of Illinois, covers up most of the state of Iowa, gets all the way down into northern Missouri, sections of northeast Kansas, and it has inched a little bit further back to the west in the South Dakota and a very small section of Nebraska. Now, I don't want to ignore this area because we're not going to talk about this area as much, and forgive me ahead of time, Oklahoma and Texas, but I just think a whole lot of our focus needs to be for areas to the north. But there is a slight risk that does extend all the way down through Oklahoma and Texas also. So just to zoom into this area, we're gonna talk about this area more here in a second. I got you covered. But just to zoom into my southern areas down here, tornado threat, there is a 5% risk that does go in the brown all the way down to Oklahoma City, almost all the way down to Lawton. The wind threats in this entire yellow area, which goes all the way down to Midland, Abilene, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And the hail threat, not only in the yellow do you have a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger, if you live in this black outline region, right through here, that is a 10% risk of significant sized hail, which the Storm Prediction Center considers 2 inch in diameter or larger. So let's start to zoom in, though, to some of these higher impact states. We'll kick it off by talking about Minnesota. Minneapolis, St. Paul, you guys are in that moderate risk area, but this is the tornado outlook, okay? So in the red area, that is a 15% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of any given location. The yellow area is a 10% risk. The brown is a 5% risk. So it does, show a lot of town names, city names on here. Obviously, it doesn't show every single one. But I'm assuming if they have these towns highlighted, these are some of the more highly populated areas. Of course, Minneapolis is a household city name. Most people have heard of that before. Rochester down here. But, man, it's pretty wild to see this kind of stuff this far north this time of the year. We see it occasionally, but it's normally deeper in the summer. Here we are late April and getting it. But the entire black outline region that you're seeing across Minnesota, that is also, and includes all the yellow and the red area, 15 to 30% risk area. You also have a 10% risk of a strong tornado, EF2 or stronger in this region. Now, hopefully this doesn't go slow for us, and I can already tell it is. That's very unfortunate. But we're just going to have to wait it out. I have every state printed out, but the Storm Prediction Center site just continues to be slow. And I thought it was maybe my computer, but, everything else is going pretty fast. But here's the wind outlook. This is where, something that I think could change. But right now, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the red area has a 30% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. The yellow area is a 15% risk of that. We go on and start backing it up. That moved a lot quicker for us, so that's good. We pull up the hail outlook. The entire red area, 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. The yellow area is a 15% risk of that. And the black outline region, which covers all the 30% risk area, there's also a 10% risk of this hail being significant in size, which is 2 inch in diameter or larger. So all hazards type deal in the southern half of Minnesota for tomorrow. Let's go on and switch it to Wisconsin. Eau Claire, Tomah, if I said that right, Portage, La Crosse, Eau Claire, I think I just said that already. You guys have, and it looks like there has been some tweaks. It looks like it's kind of shrunk a little bit in Wisconsin, but that red area, that is a 15% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. The yellow area, which folks almost covers the entire state of Wisconsin, has a 10% risk of a tornado. And then in the black outlined area, which covers, and with the black dashes going in between, which covers all the yellow and red area, that is a 10% risk of a strong tornado, EF2 or higher. Brown area, 5% risk of a tornado, like Milwaukee. Green Bay, you have a 10% risk of a strong tornado tomorrow. So pretty wild stuff, guys. So we're going to back this up. Oh, look at it moving pretty fast now. And then the wind outlook. Red area, 30% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then the yellow area, 15% risk of it. One thing that I think will change with the wind outlook, and I've been saying this, and I could be wrong, is I think they will introduce a hatch risk of winds in this setup. I don't know where that's going to be, but that would mean that winds could exceed 75, 80 miles per hour. It'd be a 10% risk of that. But we back this up and we look at the hail outlook for Wisconsin. Almost the entire state of Wisconsin, but except, I would say, kind of areas tucked into the western coastline of Lake Michigan. Everybody in the red, 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And then the black outlined area, that is a 10% risk of significant sized hail, 2 inch in diameter or larger. Yellow area, like Milwaukee, and other areas along the western coastline of Lake Michigan, 10% risk of hail. 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. Let's take a look at Iowa. Okay, this is the tornado outlook. Des Moines, you have a 10% risk of a tornado, but the red area, that is a 15% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. The yellow area is a 10% risk of that. And in the entire red and yellow area, you also have a 10% risk of a strong EF2 tornado or higher. And that includes Des Moines, Fort Dodge, Mason City, Waterloo, Dubuque, Davenport, Iowa City, and everybody in the red and yellow area pretty much. And then the brown area, that is a 5% risk of a tornado. Includes Sioux City, Council Bluffs, Burlington, etc. What about, it keeps making me want to do all this. And what about the wind threat? This is actually decreased a little bit for Iowa. So pretty much most of the state of Iowa at least has a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. A little bit less once you get in the southwestern areas of the state. And then the hail threat for Iowa, significant. If it would pull up. Entire state of Iowa, just about, except the far southeast corner of the state near Burlington, has a risk of significant sized hail. See, there's all those black dashes going throughout Iowa. That is a 10% risk, a hatched risk of significant sized hail, 2-inch in diameter or larger. And then the yellow area, that is a 15% risk of hail, and the red area is a 30% risk of hail. So risk of stronger hail also, like I just mentioned. South Dakota, no reason staying on this very long, but I do want to show you guys some love because the severe weather threat has shifted a little bit further to the west. But the tornado outlook, Waterloo down to Brookings, Sioux Falls, 2% risk of a tornado. But there is a very small section that has a 5% risk here. But there has been a bit of a change, a little bit higher of a risk of, I believe, winds and hail has been shifted into South Dakota if it would pull up for us. Do apologize. The reason that I keep having the backspace is because if I don't, I would pull up so many graphics and it would just, guys, I already pull up about 1 million tabs, but South Dakota's taken specifically a lot of time here. But the wind outlook for South Dakota, the yellow area and all these communities here and towns, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then the hail outlook. Red area, if you live in the far, far extreme eastern areas of the state of South Dakota, you have a 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch. And then the yellow area is a 15% risk of that. And if you live in the black outline region, black dashes, that's a hatch risk. That is a 10% risk of significant sized hail, 2-inch in diameter or larger. Now let's jump back over to Michigan. Kind of did a back one way, then back the other here. But I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. Michigan, you do have certain areas like Ironwood to Iron Mountain. You guys have a 10% risk of a tornado and also a 10% risk of a strong EF2 tornado or higher. And then Marquette up to Houghton, 5% risk in the brown, 5% risk of a tornado. And this extends all the way into areas of lower Michigan, Traverse City. And then the green, that's a 2% risk of a tornado. Okay, see if this will go fast or slow for us. It's like just a waiting game here. We'll be there eventually. I know I got a lot of people tuning in from Michigan that are like, and almost everybody that tunes in is kind. I know Steven, Lisa, many people, and I got my buddy down in Detroit here. But here is the wind outlook for Michigan. The red area, 30% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And the yellow area, that's a 15% risk of that. And then the hail threat. We do have a chance of significant hail all the way into Ironwood, but the red area, 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And then the yellow area is a 15% risk of that. Ironwood, you do have a risk of significant sized hail, 2-inch in diameter or larger. So the general theme is the further west you get, so the western UP of Michigan, that's going to be where your highest severe weather threat will be. Now, jumping down to Illinois, there is a risk of, there is a 10% risk of a tornado within 25 miles on any given location up near Rockford, the extreme northwestern areas of the state. Moline. I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments because I do have viewers in this area. But you guys got not only the 10% risk of a tornado, but also that 10% risk of a strong EF2 tornado or higher. And then in the brown area, that is a 5% risk of a tornado. Quincy, Galesburg, up to Aurora, and then Chicago, Bloomington, Peoria, 2% risk of a tornado. Let's hit the backspace button. And let's look at the damaging wind threat next. We just got to wait. But, Chicago, you're right on the fringe of the higher end threat. For example, Chicago, 2% risk of a tornado. Rockford, you guys have a 10% risk of a strong tornado. So, not that long of a drive. You're very close to the higher end threat, but definitely not as high end as your buddies up in Rockford if you live in Chicago. Boy, oh boy, is this taking forever. I do apologize for it not being very crisp, but I like these individual graphics, so I'm down with waiting. Hopefully this stuff speeds up in the future. But the yellow area, this is the wind outlook, yes. So the yellow area is a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. This includes all of northern Illinois. And then the hail outlook for Illinois. In the red area, that is a 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in size. And the yellow area is a 15% risk of that. So Chicago, Peoria, Galesburg, Quincy, Bloomington, you guys all have that. And up towards Rockford and a little bit further to the extreme northwestern portion of the state, you also have the 10% risk of significant sized hail, which is 2-inch in diameter or larger. Now, Nebraska, not much to speak on here. Omaha, you got that 5% risk of a tornado. Lincoln, 2% risk. But overall, I would watch for a little bit of an increase of a tornado threat, maybe a little bit further back west in the state of Nebraska, but there is a pretty extreme cutoff. But as of now, the reason that they've increased the severe weather threat for Nebraska is mainly driven off hail. Here is the wind outlook. The far northeastern section of the state, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. But the hail threat has increased. I really do think we'll get some nasty cells that develop in extreme eastern areas of Nebraska. So red area, which does include Omaha down to Falls City, 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch. The yellow is a 15% risk, and the black outline region with the black dashes, that is a risk of significant sized hail, 2-inch in diameter or larger. Now Missouri, conditional threat, the further south you get. The entire northern half of Missouri has a 5% risk of a tornado. Columbia up to St. Joseph, Kansas City, Kirksville, Memphis, 5% risk of a tornado. Hannibal, and then there is that 2% risk in Joplin, Jefferson City. There's a chance that maybe no storms fire in Missouri. It's just something that we have to watch here. And then the wind threat in Missouri, the yellow area, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in that yellow area. And then the hail threat. Any storms that do form could produce all hazards. But that red area in Maryville, Kansas City, St. Joseph, I'm not going to pronounce the name that starts with a C, but you see it there. That red area is a 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in size. And then the yellow area is a 15% risk of that. And if you live in the black outline region with the black dashes, that is a 10% risk of significant sized hail, 2-inch in diameter or larger. Now, the last state we're going to zoom into is Kansas, and then we're just going to let it go after that. This is the last state that does have a bit of an enhanced risk in it, and that's why I've been zooming into some states. Enhanced risk and higher, I will zoom into the state. But eastern areas of Kansas, you do have a 5% risk of a tornado. This does include Topeka. Went through that a little bit too fast. Topeka, Emporia, Wichita, Kansas City, Coffeyville, 5% risk of a tornado. The wind threat here, 15% risk in the yellow area of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then the hail threat. If we get any storms to form, they could produce very large hail. Far northeastern areas of the state, 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in size. The yellow area is a 15% risk of that, and the black outline region is a 10% risk of significant sized hail. And just a note, that's not 10 plus 30, 10 plus 15. The hatch risk that you see in the black outline region, it's its own thing. Okay, so 10% risk of 2-inch in diameter or larger hail. So, it's always a lot going over that, but we get detailed on this channel. So let's take a look at what the HRRR model is showing for tomorrow. First off, we'll start off tomorrow morning. I think we're going to have ongoing strong to severe storms already up here in central Minnesota. I think we'll have scattered convection storm activity in western Wisconsin, but there's nothing really going on in Iowa. So as we take it to, say, about mid-late morning, I think we'll have some storms, could be strong to severe, cruising through western areas and northwestern areas of Wisconsin. And then we take it to about midday, early afternoon, storms erupt kind of in western areas of Minnesota, northeastern areas of South Dakota. And I really think that this is the beginning stages of a pretty nasty line of storms that'll sweep through the rest of Minnesota and get into Wisconsin and eventually into the western UP of Michigan. Now, you already see these storms right here in the UP, okay? But you keep this going, and we take it to about, the afternoon hours, and, you're wondering, is anything going to get going in Iowa? Well, it might not. But look at all this storm activity up here in really in Minnesota. We got one cell getting going right here, and I'm telling you, anything individual in this air mass will have an opportunity to produce everything. Okay, and then we start to take it into about late afternoon, evening time. You see these little squiggly circle things coming off this line? This is where we have intense updrafts, rotating updrafts. And these storms right here that are moving through, eastern areas of Minnesota, getting into northern Wisconsin, they can produce all hazards, severe wind gusts, strong tornadoes, damaging hail. And then we got this one cell right here in extreme areas of southeast South Dakota. That could happen. But, we start to take it into, say, late evening hours. We got this one lone cell right here. This could be a tornado-producing supercell kind of cruising through areas of Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota down here. We got this line of storms up here that I do think will be there that could produce some severe wind gusts. This is getting into late evening. It's getting closer to midnight. Look at all this storm activity in the UP of Michigan. It could be a rocky night tomorrow night up here. But in general, we're getting all the way into late tomorrow night, and nothing's really firing. Down in Nebraska, Iowa, northern Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, good chunk of Wisconsin. You're thinking, was this a bust? And listen, I'm telling you right now, as we start to get into, say, late, like the wee hours of the morning, Tuesday morning, you could begin to get some thunderstorm activity down here. And in fact, I'm going to show you a closer look at the south central U.S. here in a second. But, it doesn't fire anything in Iowa. So there's going to be a lot of people, if this ends up happening like this, that are going to be irritated because nothing ended up happening, because they're probably going to end up trying to cancel schools across this area for the anticipation of bad weather, and rightfully so. But the H-4 model doesn't show a whole lot. Now, I will show some love further south. Okay, we started taking into midday, not a whole lot. We get into the afternoon hours. Look at this lone cell that pops up, north of Abilene, kind of near Childress, Texas. And we get a lot of activity firing up here in northern Mexico. Look at these storms firing here in west central Texas. And then we start to get late in the evening, and we get some nasty cells. And these cells won't have a lot of wind energy to work with, but they'll have a lot of storm fuel. So any cells that do form in Texas, and then eventually into Oklahoma, look at these cells right here just south of Woodard. These cells could produce all hazards, but mainly for damaging winds, and severe hail will be the biggest threat. Tornado threat, not as big. But this is like late evening, like getting close to midnight, and these are some nasty cells firing here in northern Oklahoma. And these eventually do drift into more areas of northern Oklahoma, and eventually into the wee hours of the morning gets into areas of Kansas. But man, everything's just kind of everywhere, right? And all I can tell you guys is these short-range models don't always tell us the story. But one thing we're pretty confident in is, we're going to have one heck of an environment tomorrow. This is tomorrow morning. This is what you call the low-level jet. These are winds at about 850 millibars. You convert that to miles per hour, 4,000 to 6,000 feet up in the air. And so we're going to have a low-level jet tomorrow morning already, coming out the south in general, 50, 60 knots. This is going to be bringing up a lot of moist air from the lower latitudes, from the south, all the way up into the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region. So this low-level jet wind energy kinematics is an ingredient supportive for severe weather. So there's going to be a lot of wind energy in the atmosphere that's going to support damaging winds, tornadoes, and just storms to form. But will they form? So, we start to get into tomorrow evening, and the low-level jet actually begins to maximize and get stronger. So we take it into like the middle of the night tomorrow night. Low-level jet increases to like 60 to 70 knots, even higher up towards northern lower Michigan and the UP. So even if we don't get a lot of storms, we're going to get some strong gusty winds. But this is why I think we could have a more significant wind threat up here in Wisconsin and the UP, because of how much this low-level jet is going to really increase. So I think there is a possibility at some point between now and the start of this event, we have an increased severe weather threat, or at least a hatch risk issue. But this is a lot of wind energy, guys. Huge low-level jet, a lot of winds, and what we call the low levels of the atmosphere, 6,000 feet up, about a mile above our heads. You look up in the sky in the middle of the day, and you'll see the clouds just racing, and that'll be a day that'll be the situation we'll have tomorrow across the Midwest and the upper Midwest. So a lot of wind energy. Check that off the box. And because we have such a strong southerly flow in the lower levels, this is going to yank up in pretty dramatic fashion a lot of moist air from the south. So we take it to about midday, early afternoon. Dew points begin to surge into the 60s all the way up into central Minnesota, all across Iowa. And of course, it's very moist the further south you get. The kind of drier air, I would say, not super dry air, but drier air begins to get replaced with moist air across Wisconsin into the western UP, all of Illinois. Look at the moist air building into Indiana. And you get this pocket of dew points that are like close to 70 up here in Rochester, Eau Claire, La Crosse. I mean, look at this pool of very moist air, unseasonably moist air for this time of the year. And so, these storms love this moist air. They love a moist environment, and you're going to have it. And it's because you have such a strong low-level jet that really just yanks up all this moist air from the south. And then the air mass eventually does clear out as we get into Tuesday morning as a cold front sweeps through. And in response to all this moisture in the atmosphere, you're going to have higher CAPE levels. Normally, CAPE responds to higher moisture at the surface. So we get into tomorrow morning, and I put my cursor over this area. I'm sorry, this is tomorrow afternoon. This is CAPE levels, mixed layer CAPE, 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram. Tons, rocket fuel in the atmosphere, basically, for this setup. I mean, it's kind of blowing my mind that we're not getting a lot of convection firing up, especially with such a notable low-level jet in place. I'm telling you, just because I just showed you that short-range model that showed no storms fire in Iowa, don't tell everybody and your cousin's uncle's hamster that there's going to be no storms in Iowa. That's not what you should take out of that. I just think model guidance is struggling. There is a lot. The atmosphere is loaded tomorrow, energy-wise, and just all ingredients. Even if I put my cursor over these areas, 1,000 joules per kilogram will get the job done in the environment that will be in place. So it's just hard for me to imagine we're not going to get more convection than what's showing. But the significant tornado parameter is going to be, off the charts. It's going to spike pretty dramatically right where we have that 15% risk hatched area, the highest risk of tornadoes. Significant tornado parameters, spikes to just goes way up. And this, basically, the higher number you see, the better the ingredients for tornadoes. Doesn't mean we're going to necessarily get it, but the better the ingredients that's in place. So we keep this going, and this continues all night. So, so we gotta pay attention to this. Just because models disagree with one another doesn't mean that we're not going to have a significant event. Now we get into Tuesday. Remember how I circled this area of the Ohio Valley in New England and the Northeast about how I really thought this area was going to have a higher severe weather threat? Well, sure enough, they bumped it up to an enhanced risk. And now it isn't, I don't think this is driven off tornadoes. I think it's driven off hail, if you read the discussion. But I think we can continue to get a higher end tornado threat in this area. As high as tomorrow? No. But this is Tuesday's severe weather outlook. Slight risk does go back to Texas, all the way through Oklahoma, through portions of Arkansas, Missouri, and then I'll start to zoom into these areas. This goes all the way through southern Illinois, good chunk of Indiana, northern areas of Kentucky, and then the enhanced risk is introduced. But a slight risk does get into Detroit, enhanced risk from Columbus through Pittsburgh, Erie, Buffalo, all the way to Syracuse, southern tier of New York, Cleveland. Level 3 out of 5 risk of severe weather. And all we know right now, guys, this is all we can look at. This entire yellow area, that's a 15% risk of severe weather, any severe weather. If you live in these little black outline regions like this and like this, there's a 10% risk of significant severe weather. There's going to be tornadoes, hail, wind. We'll find that out tomorrow. And then the red area, that is a 30% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in any given location. What's driving this? If you read the discussion, this is more than likely for hail, but I think this will be for wind too. And I think the high-end tornado outlook we can get out of this is a 10% risk. And I think that's possible. I've been talking about this for the last several days, that I thought that this exact area, if you go back and look at a video and go back to the Tuesday timestamp, you'll see where I circled this exact area where I think this will be the higher-end area for tornadoes and just severe weather. And sure enough, check it out. Pretty wild. And really, why is that the case? Well, we'll stop it here. This is as far out as the HRRR model can go. Okay? And it's already showing a line of storms coming out of Ohio, Indiana, and etc. But we're not in range of short-range model guidance, at least in reliable range. So I don't have a model comparison of everything, but we already have some storms firing here in PA and New York. But one thing I can tell you is if we look back at the Euro, because we're not in range of short range, is I'll stop it right here. go a little bit further. This is Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, and I put my cursor over this area. We got a raging low-level jet right over the entire enhanced risk area. Now, the winds are a little veered, and they're coming more so out the west instead of the south like the day prior, tomorrow. So I just still think we're going to get a damaging wind threat, and I do think we'll get that increased tornado threat. But the reason the higher just severe weather threat in general is here is because of this low-level jet, in my opinion, and better lapse rates that support higher in hail. But there's a lot of wind energy right here across the Ohio Valley in the Northeast. It's a pretty raging low-level jet across areas that you're seeing on your screen, pushing, 50, 55 knots. So there's going to be a lot of wind energy in the atmosphere. Next thing you look at is dew points. Dew points will surge into the 60s, all the way up into Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, all the way up into, the Adirondacks. You'll get dew points pretty deep into the 60s. Check that off as a thermodynamic for severe weather. Okay, so that low-level jet will be overlapping this very moist environment. And in response, you'll have some pockets of higher end Cape. For example, come on, we were running smooth. So, for example, higher end Cape levels are probably back in Ohio, but I mean, heck, you got over 1,000 joules per kilogram in Cape in pockets, across the southern tier, across Erie, western PA, Ohio. So, Tuesday's going to be the day to watch too. So, I'll wrap it up with that. I will say that I think Wednesday and especially Thursday could be big days also, especially Thursday. I'm watching that day like a hawk, and that's going to include probably more highly populated areas of like Kentucky, Tennessee, and surrounding states, I think. But we'll talk about that more when we can. Appreciate the support. Appreciate people who continue to tune in. I really do. Thank you for all the kind comments over the weekend. I made that post on the community tab, just kind of talking about how views are down. It really wasn't me complaining, always keep things more personal on this channel, probably compared to other channels. And I like to just talk about things, but I appreciate your feedback, why you think it might be the case. And, talking to a lot of people out there in the weather YouTube world, it's not just me. It definitely isn't. And, I certainly get that people tune in more that live in the South, because my channel, I just have more people who view from the South. So I certainly get that. And I think just more people just tune in more during hurricane season and winter time, honestly. I think that's when more people watch videos like the ones I make. And I think that the length of my videos probably work against me a little bit more too. I honestly think that's the reason why my videos don't hit the algorithm as much. For example, I've made over 2,000 videos, 2,500 videos in the course of the 5 years of being on YouTube. And not one video. Like, if you go on my page and you click on the highest viewed video, not one video has hit 100,000 views, and that's unheard of. And I think it's because YouTube kind of prevents my videos from hitting the algorithm because of the length. And maybe it's not a YouTube thing. I think most people just prefer shorter updates, and that's just kind of the world we live in. I think that social media has really made people's attention span a lot shorter, and I totally get it because I'm guilty of that too. I am totally guilty of that. But that's why I put about 1 million timestamps up in these videos so you can just jump ahead. But of course, I think that when people, click on the video and they see it's 35, 40 minutes long, they just immediately probably click right back off. It's like, bro, I don't got no time for all that. But, it's just the only way that I know how to do it, guys. So I appreciate all the kind words, the awesome feedback from you folks, and appreciate the loving atmosphere. That's all I got. We'll wake up and do it again tomorrow morning. Stay tuned for that update, and let's stay aware. God bless.